Henry took it out of his hand, broke it, looked at the cylinder, and laughed. "Good news," he told Shannon. "These bullets have been in there so long they're green." He put $2 on the counter, for their food, and then made a terrible mistake. To this day I believe things would have ended badly for them no matter what, yet still I wish I could call to him across the years, "Don't put that gun down still loaded." "Don't do that, son. Green or not, put those bullets in your pocket." But only the dead can call across time, I know that now, and from personal experience. As they were leaving, hand in hand, Arlette whispered in my burning ear, the counterman snatched that old horse pistol off the counter, held it in both hands, and pulled the trigger again. This time it fired, and although he probably thought he was aiming at Henry, the bullet struck Shannon Cottery in the lower back. She screamed and stumbled forward out the door into the blowing snow. Henry caught her before she could fall and helped her into their last stolen car, another Ford. The counterman tried to shoot him through the window, and that time the old gun blew up in his hands. A piece of metal took out his left eye. I have never been sorry. I am not as forgiving as Charles Greiner. Seriously wounded, perhaps dying already, Shannon went into labor as Henry drove through thickening snow toward Elko, 30 miles to the southwest, perhaps thinking he might find a doctor there. I don't know if there was a doctor or not, but there was certainly a police station, and the counterman rang it with the remains of his eyeball still drying on his cheek. Two local cops and 4 members of the Nevada State Patrol were waiting for Henry and Shannon at the edge of town, but Henry and Shannon never saw them. It's 30 miles between Death and Elko, and Henry made only 28 of them. Just inside the town limits, but still well beyond the edge of the village, the last of Henry's luck let go. With Shannon screaming and holding her belly as she bled all over the seat, he must have been driving fast, too fast. Or maybe he just hit a pothole in the road. However it was, the Ford skidded into the ditch and stalled. There they sat in that high desert emptiness while a strengthening wind blew snow all around them, and what was Henry thinking? That what he and I had done in Nebraska had led him and the girl he loved to that place in Nevada. Arlette didn't tell me that, but she didn't have to. I knew. He spied the ghost of a building through the thickening snow, and got Shannon out of the car. She managed a few steps into the wind, then could manage no more. The girl who could do trigonometry and might have been the first female graduate of the normal school in Omaha laid her head on her young man's shoulder and said, "I can't go any farther, honey. Put me on the ground." "What about the baby?" he asked her. "The baby is dead, and I want to die, too," she said. "I can't stand the pain. It's terrible. I love you, honey, but put me on the ground." He carried her to that ghost of a building instead, which turned out to be a line shack not much different from the shanty near Boys Town, the one with the faded bottle of Royal Crown Cola painted on the side. There was a stove, but no wood. He went out and scrounged a few pieces of scrap lumber before the snow could cover them, and when he went back inside, Shannon was unconscious. Henry lit the stove, then put her head on his lap. Shannon Cottery was dead before the little fire he'd made burned down to embers, and then there was only Henry, sitting on a mean line shack cot where a dozen dirty cowboys had lain themselves down before him, drunk more often than sober. He sat there and stroked Shannon's hair while the wind shrieked outside and the shack's tin roof shivered. All these things Arlette told me on a day when those two doomed children were still alive. All these things she told me while the rats crawled around me and her stink filled my nose and my infected, swollen hand ached like fire. I begged her to kill me, to open my throat as I had opened hers, and she wouldn't. That was her revenge. It might have been 2 days later when my visitor arrived at the farm, or even 3, but I don't think so. I think it was only 1. I don't believe I could have lasted 2 or 3 more days without help. I had stopped eating and almost stopped drinking. Still, I managed to get out of bed and stagger to the door when the hammering on it commenced. Part of me thought it might be Henry, because part of me still dared hope that Arlette's visit had been a delusion hatched in delirium. And even if it had been real, that she had lied. It was Sheriff Jones. My knees loosened when I saw him, and I pitched forward. If he hadn't caught me, I would have gone tumbling out onto the porch. I tried to tell him about Henry and Shannon, that Shannon was going to be shot, that they were going to end up in a line shack on the outskirts of Elko, that he, Sheriff Jones, had to call somebody and stop it before it happened. All that came out was a garble, but he caught the names. He's run off with her, all right, Jones said. But if Harl came down and told you that, why'd he leave you like this? What bit you? Rat, I managed.